Not all dangers lurk in the dark. Some creep into your life wrapped in warmth and care, tucking you in at night, bringing you a cup of warm milk, whispering, "I'm doing this for your own good." And before you know it, they've swallowed you whole. Carl Jung uncovered a chilling reality. The most dangerous trap is built with love, affection, guilt, and care. It doesn't show up with bars or chains. It shows up as dependence, as a debt you owe with every breath, and it always comes with a gentle smile. You didn't really grow up, you grew obedient. You never learned to stand on your own. Instead, you learned to please, because she needed you to need her. This isn't about cruelty or abuse. It's about devotion gone wrong, turned destructive. Imagine a mother whose love is so intense it leaves no room for you to become yourself. Jung called her the devouring mother. Not because she wants harm, but because her love is so complete it eats away every inch of your growing self. You barely notice it. You think it's the way things should be. You believe staying small means being good. Now you're in your 20s or 30s, frozen in place, waiting for someone else to tell you what to do. You still hear her voice when you try to take a chance. Are you sure? That's dangerous. Don't leave me. This isn't just your story. It's a silent epidemic. Until you name it, until you see it for what it is, you'll never break free. In this part, we'll dive into the psychology behind the devouring mother, why so many men stay emotionally stuck, and how Jung's most brutal insight might be the key to your freedom. Because the toughest opponent you'll ever face is the one who made you feel the safest. What if the person who loved you most also kept you from ever really living? That's the haunting truth Jung explored, a horror draped in hugs, kisses, and warm meals. Not neglect, not abuse, but too much protection, too much care, too much of her. Picture it, her tying your shoes each morning, packing your lunch, holding your hand. You feel safe, so you don't question it. You don't notice her grip tightening around your life as you grow. She picks your clothes, decides your friends, tells you what's safe and what's not. On the surface, she's only looking out for you. But her choices shout, "I don't want you to grow up." Jung saw this as a deep archetype, the shadow side of nurturing. When care turns into control, when love becomes a tool to keep you small, when comfort becomes a cage. Because love can be a weapon. It's not hate or violence that keeps you weak, it's love used to hold you down. She doesn't set out to hurt you. She's scared. Scared of being alone. Scared you'll fly too far away and leave her behind. So she wraps you in silent chains of guilt. You're my whole world. No one will love you like I do. I sacrificed everything for you. You wouldn't hurt your mother, would you? Each phrase is a link, disguised as devotion. You think you hear love, but what you feel is command. Under that softness, you become a servant. An emotional caretaker for the one who raised you. You grow up afraid to take charge of your life, haunted by her voice every time you try. Jung didn't invent this idea, he saw it everywhere. In myths, legends, and dreams. In fairy tales where the witch locks the boy in the forest. In stories where a dragon guards the hero's path. In the siren song calling sailors back to shore. The devouring mother is a universal pattern, an archetypal force in our minds, and it doesn't only appear in moms. It pops up in governments, institutions, even in relationships, anywhere someone offers safety in exchange for your freedom. But the story often starts at home. When a mother can't let her child go, she keeps a boy living like a boy, stuck in a space between childhood and real adulthood. He doubts himself. He avoids responsibility. He looks for partners who remind him of his mother, then resents them for it. He becomes a prisoner of comfort, held captive by his own reliance on her. The bars of his prison are affection and safety, a sweet poison he never suspects. Because who questions a mother's love? It's sacred, pure, untouchable. Yet sometimes, purity can be its own trap. You might not see the trap, because the devouring mother masks her chains in kindness. She picks your clothes, but you mistake it for care. She chooses your friends, but you call it concern. She tells you how to feel, who to trust, and you think she's just guiding you. The real hang-up is that you begin to believe you can't make decisions without her. You lose the taste for risk. You stay in jobs you hate, in relationships that don't satisfy you, because leaving means facing the fear she taught you to feel. And the guilt is brutal. The moment you try to step away, you feel a jab in your chest, as if you've stabbed her. She's your mother, how could you abandon her? You know this feeling. You say to yourself, I can't leave until she's okay. Until she's happy. So you stay. And every day, you wake up to another layer of her safety blanket, another thread in the net that holds you down. Jung named this archetype to help us see it. Because once you see it, you can start to undo it. You can learn to stand without her voice in your head, to make choices without feeling like you're betraying her. You can recognize the sweet words that bind you and turn them into signs pointing toward your own strength. That awareness is the first step out of the cage. Part of the horror here is that it feels loving. It feels natural. Who would question a mother who does everything for her child? And yet, beneath her gestures lies a form of manipulation, subtle and relentless. A mother who never lets go is not setting you free to become yourself. She's keeping you in a role that makes you her whole world, but costs you yours. So, you learn to survive with someone else's script. You end up living by the rules she wrote, never writing your own. And if you try to improvise, if you try to claim a piece of your own story, you feel like you're walking out on her life. You feel obligated to stay small, because she's made you dependent. That's the real prison. No walls, no locks, just a web of kindness and guilt. You might see the pattern in others, a boss who treats you like a child, a partner who insists they know what's best for you, a friend who saves you from every decision. But it all traces back to the devouring mother, whose archetype lives in all these figures. It's the voice that whispers, "We'll keep you safe. Just give up your freedom." It's the hand that holds yours until it's too late to pull away. The next step is recognition. You have to call it by its name. See the chains hidden in love. Hear the commands in devotion. Feel the weight of the expectation to stay small. And then, piece by piece, you start to loosen the grip. You choose a shoe for yourself. You decide what you'll eat. You pick a path and walk it, even if it scares you. You learn that safety isn't the same as growth. Because nothing grows in a cage, no matter how soft. And the person who made you feel safest might be the one you need to push against hardest. But breaking free doesn't mean breaking her heart. It means remembering your own. It means stepping into your life, unbound by someone else's fear. It means discovering who you are when you stand on your own 2 feet. And that journey starts the moment you realize the devouring mother isn't love, it's a prison. Not every act of care heals you. Sometimes what looks like protection is really control. Sometimes what feels like love is the very thing that stops you from ever becoming your own person. There are no iron bars in this prison, only memories that replay in your mind, voices you can't silence, feelings you never got to explore. Childhood should be when you find yourself, but if you grew up with a mother who couldn't let you go, you never got that chance. Instead, you learned to be exactly who she needed you to be. You became her mirror, soaking up her emotions. You took on the role of her therapist, her partner in feeling, the only one whose voice mattered. You could never show anger because it hurt her too much. You couldn't chase your own goals for fear of disappointing her. So bit by bit, you learned to shrink, to quiet your own needs, to bow your head. At first, it seemed harmless. You were polite, sensitive, always putting others before yourself. You were the good kid, the one everyone liked. But behind that friendly smile was a child who never got to be free. You were never allowed to say, "No, I don't want that," or "I'm upset," or "I disagree." Every time you tried, you'd see her face fall, sometimes tears, sometimes silence. She might say, "After everything I've done for you." That unspoken guilt cut you deep, so you'd fold again and again until one day you realized you'd lost sight of who you were. You only knew the role she'd written for you. Carl Jung called this deep wound a fractured identity, a man who looks grown but is still chained to his mother's expectations. He fears failure not because he can't handle it, but because he doesn't want to let her down. He fears success because it might pull him too far away. Independence terrifies him because he's never practiced making decisions on his own. So he hides behind routines, clings to comfort, numbs himself with distractions. He lives in quiet desperation, day after day, wondering why nothing ever changes. You can spot the signs if you know what to look for. Chronic indecision, because you were never allowed to choose. A habit of people-pleasing, because her love came with strings attached. A paralyzing fear of conflict, because any disagreement meant emotional punishment. You might find yourself drawn to partners who micromanage your life, because that's the only love you recognize. You feel guilty when you enjoy freedom, as if making your own choices is a betrayal. You tiptoe through life on eggshells, around your mother and everyone else, convinced that your wants are dangerous, your feelings selfish, your voice a threat. And when you finally can't hold it in any longer, you explode. Sometimes in rage, sometimes in a breakdown, sometimes by just shutting down completely. You wake up one day and can't even explain why you feel so empty. After all, she loved you. She gave you everything. She just cared too much. But love can wound when it's wielded as control, and guilt is the weapon that keeps you from healing. Jung saw this pattern again and again, in men who couldn't commit to a partner, in those chained to addiction or wrapped in anxiety or depression, in men who blamed women for their unhappiness without realizing their anger was rooted in their mother's hold over them. Society doesn't make this any easier. It tells you that you can't be angry at your mother. You're supposed to be grateful. You're supposed to honor her. You're supposed to be a good son. But what if being the good son means losing yourself? What if that model of good means your true self dies inside? Until you face the shadow, you stay stuck, paralyzed, acting out someone else's script instead of writing your own. These wounds leave no visible scars, but they echo in every job you quit, in every relationship you sabotage, in every dream you tuck away because you think you should be more realistic. You speak quietly when you have something bold to say. You apologize for existing whenever your needs surface. This trauma hides in plain sight because it looks and feels like love. But love that claims ownership is a form of colonization. It steals your right to become yourself. Some prisons need no walls or watchtowers. They only need you to believe there's no way out. That's why so many never escape the devouring mother, not because they can't, but because they don't know they're trapped. From the outside, it looks flawless, a mother who adores her son, a bond everyone envies. People praise it. You're lucky. You must be so grateful. She did everything for you. They don't see the truth. She didn't raise a man. She raised a dependent. Jung warned that this emotional smothering is one of the most dangerous dynamics in human psychology, because it dresses weakness in the robes of goodness. The obedient son, the nice guy, the helpful child who never speaks his mind, he's rewarded until one day he breaks. Maybe he falls into depression. Maybe he turns to substances. Maybe he drifts from one relationship to another, always looking for someone to save him, to make choices for him, to smother him just like she did. On some level, he's still hoping to finish a story he never began. Society keeps feeding the lie. We laugh at mama's boy as a joke. A man who respects his mother will respect his wife. We tell each other, behind every successful man is a strong mother. Those sayings aren't always wrong, but they can blind us to the wounds of emotional enmeshment. Because not every boy who loves his mom is free. Some are buried under the weight of expectations they never chose, and they don't talk about it. Who wants to admit that the person who loved you most might also be the one who hurt you most? It feels disloyal, even cruel. So they stay silent. But silence isn't healing. It's surrender. Jung didn't ask you to hate your mother or cast blame. He asked you to see clearly, to separate, to become whole. You can't truly grow up if part of you still belongs to her. That's why escape feels like betrayal, but it's really the first step toward yourself. You might have a career, a home, a partner, and still feel stuck, because your mind is wired for obedience, not autonomy. You second-guess every choice, fear conflict, avoid risks, because you learned that stepping out of line causes pain. So you polish that nice guy mask until it fits seamlessly, until people trust you and rely on you. But behind it lies a quiet fury, the rage of someone who never got to speak up. Carl Jung called this the failure to individuate. When a man never breaks free from his parents' psychic hold, especially his mother's, and this failure seeps into every corner of his adult life. You don't just stumble through childhood, you carry its chains into every new chapter, dragging them behind you like an anchor. You might leave the house, but until you confront this wound, you never really leave that room in your mind. You never learn to stand without someone else's voice telling you how. You never discover the power of saying, "This is my choice." And until you do, the devouring mother's shadow looms over every move you make. It isn't about polishing yourself to fit someone else's mold, it's about discovering who you really are beneath the expectations that have been heaped upon you. As Jung explained, individuation is the journey of becoming an indivisible whole, a unique self separate from the invisible strings others, especially our parents, have attached to us. Before you can love fully, lead authentically, or create genuinely, you must learn to exist on your own terms. That means digging up the parts of you that were buried beneath her insistence. The parts she smothered because they threatened her sense of control. To free yourself, you must first recognize the trap. In Jungian terms, this is the mother complex, a deep psychological imprint in which your mother's voice becomes the default authority over your emotions, your identity, and even your choices. You feel guilty whenever you assert independence, as though striking out on your own is a betrayal. You hesitate to disappoint any woman in your life, because you've been conditioned to believe their happiness is your responsibility. You find yourself drawn to partners who mother you, rather than challenge you, and you mask your emotional passivity behind an easy kindness. Deep down, you harbor a rage at women you dare not express, not because you hate them, but because you feel ashamed of anger toward the one person you've been taught never to oppose. Breaking this mother complex doesn't mean attacking or blaming your mom. It means reclaiming everything you gave up in exchange for her love, your anger, your confidence, your voice, your autonomy. The path to individuation begins with facing your own shadow, the parts of yourself deemed unacceptable by both your mother and your culture. Anger, sexuality, assertiveness, rebellion. These traits threaten the devouring mother's control, so she smothers them in the cradle. And in time, you internalize that smothering, living with the very constraints that once came from her. But as Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. If you don't confront these parts of yourself, you'll spend your life reacting to fears that were never truly yours to carry. Shadow work isn't an invitation to darkness, it's an invitation to wholeness. You're not meant to unleash every impulse you feel, but you must acknowledge their existence in order to choose consciously rather than react unconsciously. Here's the hardest truth: you don't have to hate your mother to claim your freedom. This isn't a vendetta. It's an act of boundary setting. Many devouring mothers aren't malicious, they're women who have been wounded themselves, who make their children the center of their universe without realizing the damage they inflict. They tell you, "I just want what's best for you. No one will ever love you like I do. I sacrificed everything for you," and they mean every word. But without respect for your individuality, that love isn't love, it's imprisonment. You can honor her intentions without living in her shadow. You can thank her for what she gave you and still refuse to let her keep taking pieces of you. Emotional separation means you no longer need her approval to feel valid. You no longer shrink at the thought of her disappointment. You stop living out the life she envisioned for you and start living the one you choose. The greatest victim of the devouring mother is the so-called good boy. Polite, pleasing, obedient, never causing a fuss, always making others comfortable. But that boy isn't you. He's a mask, a survival tactic, a soul on hold. Individuation demands the death of that false self, and that process stings. You will feel guilt. You will feel grief, as though you're cutting the one person you love out of your life. But you aren't a villain. You're choosing authenticity over obedience. As you separate, you begin to reclaim your masculine energy. Not the caricature of aggression, but the essence of direction and purpose. You no longer live to be chosen. You choose. You no longer depend on being understood. You trust your own knowledge of yourself. You no longer avoid conflict. You welcome the truth, even when it cuts deep. You become dangerous, not to others, but to the lies and weaknesses that once controlled you. A man rooted in his own soul cannot be manipulated. He can love without losing himself. He can walk away when love becomes smothering. He can serve without being enslaved. Jung believed that every person carries an inner call toward wholeness, not perfection. Wholeness means embracing every aspect of yourself, your light and your darkness, your strength and your softness, your logic and your intuition. In the process of individuation, you don't become someone entirely new. You return to the person you were before the world decided who you should be. This transformation isn't a quick fix, it's a lifetime's work. Yet with every boundary you establish, every piece of yourself you reclaim, you step farther from the mother complex and closer to yourself. Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." But imagine what happens when you stop carrying that weight. What if you became the father figure your own inner child needs? What if you gave yourself permission to be bold, assertive, honest, and real? That is the final stage of individuation, to father yourself, guiding your younger self out of the fog of dependence and into the fire of your own destiny. You cease being a child in someone else's story and become the author of your own. This rite of passage into manhood isn't marked by age or accolades. It's earned in the silence of self-reflection, through pain, truth, and the willingness to lose everything that isn't genuinely yours. It's a pilgrimage from comfort toward character, from being loved toward being whole. Then comes a moment, a quiet, cold moment, unannounced, when you realize you weren't really living, you were merely performing. You were shrinking yourself to prevent disappointing the one person who first taught you the meaning of love. This is the ultimate test. Most never take it. They choose to remain in the cage of warmth and guilt, convinced that their loyalty is their virtue. But a few choose the unknown, and they are never the same. This is your moment. You are no longer a boy. You don't need permission to grow, to speak, to leave. You don't need to sacrifice yourself for her comfort. Because love that demands your silence isn't love, it's control. As Jung said, a man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them. The devouring mother may haunt your mind, but her reign ends the instant you step through that inferno and emerge on the other side. Scarred, yes, but wholly your own.